welcome to another episode of Yarn to Table. I'm Celeste and this is a show about my knitting life. If this is your first time watching me, I hope that you see something here that you like, and if you do, you can hit the subscribe button to join me every other week to talk about knitting and yarn and sometimes weaving and almost always tea. And so if you don't know, if you are a new visitor, we do have a Yarn to Table Ravelry group. That is linked below in the doobly-doo. And that's where you're going to find show notes for every episode. You can also find me on Ravelry and on Instagram as Celeste Full. If you want to see some behind the scenes stuff in my knitting and the rest of my life there on Instagram. And on Ravelry, you're going to find all of the project pages for anything on this episode or past episodes, the blogs tab for the project pages, links to the appropriate episode of Yarn to Table, and you're going to see a lot of stats there to answer any questions you may have about what size needle I used, what was that yarn again, all of that stuff. I keep it up to date over there so that I don't have to go into the text and specs here. Well, let's be honest, I keep it up to date over there because I'm an incredibly compulsive person, but also the benefit is we don't have to go through all the texts and specs here on the podcast. We can talk a little bit more about the experience of knitting, and then if you really want to know what size needle I'm using, it's over there available for you to check out. The other thing you're going to find on Ravelry in the Ravelry group is an introduce yourself thread, which I would love for you to join in on, and ask me anything thread, and of course threads with the show notes for every episode and threads about our knit-alongs. So right now we are doing a year-long KAL called the Fiber Quest KAL. And there is a video linked in the doobly-doo that explains the details and the concept of that. Basically, we're trying out new fibers all year long. And right now we are in the land of camelids. So you do have until the end of February to get your FOs into that thread. And I have seen some really, really gorgeous ones showing up so far, as well as really lovely, lively discussion in the chatter thread. So thank you everybody that's participating. I think this knit along is like such a fun one, and you may have noticed I'm not as present as I could be over there. I'm definitely commenting here and there and liking your posts if it was not obvious from my chatter segment last time. I've been a little bit stretched too thin lately. So the next land of fiber, starting up in March and running through the end of April, is going to be the land of goats. And by the time this goes up, there will be a new video all about goat fibers, the difference between different breeds and what those fibers are good for, what other kind of fibers they blend with and what those are bringing to the table, all the kind of stuff that was in my Land of Camelids video, if you guys saw that one. So link down below, you're going to find basically a playlist for this KAL, and it's going to include the KAL sort of overview, the Land of Camelids video, and now it's going to have the Land of Goats. So I hope that you will check that out if you're participating in the KAL, or even if you're just sort of curious about different fibers. So I hope you guys enjoy that one as much as you did the Land of Camelids. I certainly enjoyed making it. And that gets us through all of the KAL related stuff, all of the administrative information. Today I am drinking some David's Tea Cinnamon Rooibos, which was one of the teas in my advent calendar, and it is very, very nice. I'm just having it by itself with nothing in it, and it's still got like a really lovely sweetness to it just from the cinnamon, so I really like that. Okay, so what I'm wearing today is also my FO, and this is something that you haven't seen on the show before, but I did show off the yarn last week and talked about how I was going to make it, so you may have recognized it. And this is the Brioche Bandana Cowl, which is a pattern by Lavanya Parcella, and I made this out of some club yarn from the Homespun House Harry Potter Club. That's the variegated here, and that is the colorway The Night Bus. And then the sort of lavender mauvey color underneath was hand dyed by Andy of 10,000 Stitches as a really lovely gift to me when she contributed some yarn to be used as a KAL prize last spring. Which, by the way, I haven't said in a while, but if you are a maker of any kind and you're interested in donating prizes for KALs or giveaways, don't hesitate to ask, because I have done that in the past for designers and yarn dyers, and I just think it's really great to kind of be a moment to sort of show off something awesome that one of my viewers, one of the people in this community made, and then it can be a nice prize for somebody else in the community. So if you're curious and you just haven't seen me do that in a while, because I haven't done it in a while, and you have anything that you make that you'd like to give away, definitely let me know. So let me show you this in a little bit more detail. This cowl, excuse me, is, you can see it's all knit in the round, and then you start knitting it flat, and you sort of break at the center back and start decreasing toward this point. So it's all in 2-color brioche, and I think this would be a really nice first brioche project for someone who kind of wants to learn different things you can do in brioche. So if you're really overwhelmed by brioche and you just want the most simple brioche project in the world, I would do just a plain cowl just in the round, and I would stop here, because that's just going to be learning brioche. There you go. But when you do this cowl, if you want to get a little bit more adventurous, what's great about it is you start off with brioche in the round, which is arguably the easiest way to learn brioche, because there's no sliding back and restarting the round. When you get to the end, you're already back at the start so that you can start with the other color. So I just think it's a little bit more intuitive. Then once you've done in the round for a while, you get to learn how to do brioche flat. So it's really cool, because with one little project you can learn both round and flat, and the round comes first, which I think is the easier one. So I think that's really nice as like an adventurous project for learning these techniques. And then at the same time, of course, you start learning how to decrease in brioche. So pretty much the only thing you don't learn is how to increase in brioche, or how to go from brioche to like double knitting or another technique. So with this little project, you kind of start with the easiest, and then it gets a little bit more complicated once you've sort of got the hang of the brioche stitches. So I think this would be really, really good to, as sort of like a brioche, almost like a swatch, you know, because it's so small, but you're getting to try out different techniques. If you're like a process knitter and you are interested in brioche, instead of just having a sea of like the same thing, this could be really cool for you. It's also a lovely product. It's really easy to wear. Obviously, you can turn it inside out and do like a slightly different look, which is really cool. I really like it both ways. But I've mostly been wearing it with the variegated out. For me, I like the way variegated looks as the sort of background. I mean, obviously that's really beautiful, but I'm also just crazy in love with how variegated yarn looks in brioche when you have a solid background, because it isolates out the colors into the little V's, and I just think it's like so stunning. So the way this pattern works is your sort of A color, which is my my variegated, that's gonna create the cast on edge. So keep that in mind, which one you want to be the cast on edge. And then the B color creates the edge at the bottom, which you can see gives you this sort of clean, I mean, it's a little bit loopy. They sort of would be easy to get caught on things. That's sort of just the nature of how it works, because they're sort of multiple rows between each one of these. That's just kind of how brioche is. But so that ends up being the B color. I kind of wish that I had both the cast on and the bottom edge in the same color. It's not really a big deal, but if I were designing the cowl, that's how I would have done it. Now, I didn't really think about that until I already started. And so at that point, the solution would be to find a way to do the edge out of the variegated. I think what would actually be easier is to swap what you're using for the cast on edge, because it would require less finagling with the pattern. So ideally, that's what I would have done, but I hadn't thought about it until I was partway through. Now, changing it out and at the edge here, just a little bit more complicated. It was that much more complicated that it was not what I was in the mood to figure out how to do. I talked last episode about how I've kind of been in this slump, and this was sort of my project to help get me out of the slump. Mindless enough, but fun enough, with new, beautiful yarn, a perfect process and product knit, and I really, really enjoyed it. But as I was knitting on it, I was not in a headspace for wanting to hack the pattern and figure out how to do something different, and probably have to like rip back a little bit and, you know, not be able to be like watching television the whole time because it would require my concentration. That just wasn't what this knit was about for me. So I was just like, don't worry about it. And I just knit it as is. So whatever, not a big deal. But I did really, really, really enjoy this. I posted about it a little bit on Instagram, and you guys saw that I was knitting it with Auggie in my lap, which was lovely. Auggie, who is my cat, August, he and I have a routine where basically every evening he sits in my lap and I knit. And ever since I went to Cambridge in January, the routine has kind of been shaken up because, first of all, he gets upset when I go out of town. So it usually takes a couple days once I've been back for him to stop kind of giving me the cold shoulder a little bit, which is so sad. I really wish that cats could understand that you don't want to be away from them, you know what I mean? Like, I missed him like crazy the whole time I was gone, and I knew that he missed me, but he didn't know that I missed him. So he gives me the cold shoulder for a couple days, a day and a half, whatever. And then, you know, he wasn't giving me the cold shoulder, but my routine was kind of disrupted because, as I talked about, I wasn't like knitting as much because I would be too tired or too busy, or I would have to go out, or I would be doing schoolwork or whatever. So our routine has just been very much thrown off, and because of that, it's sort of made our relationship different, I guess, because that's our time. And like I said, I'm a very busy person. I work all day in the office, you know, I'm not necessarily, sometimes I'm going out at night doing other things. When I'm home, I might be needing to like write or something that, you know, he's trying to get on my computer and I'm like pushing him off of it. And so when we don't have the sort of set routine where he knows it's his time, it becomes difficult for us to spend time together because, you know, maybe I am free like in the morning, but that's when he wants to be like napping on the other couch and not disturbed or whatever, because we're just not in sync. And so that was really part of what was so difficult as well about the slump, which I hadn't really articulated 2 weeks ago, but I mentioned it on Instagram and a lot of people were really nice about that. But yeah, part of what was bothering me was not just that I wasn't knitting, but that I was not having these long bonding sessions with my cat every day. And so I was just spending less time snuggling him. And I had just, you know, come back from having to spend a whole week away from him, which was really, I really, really missed him. And then I come home and it's like, we're just all out of sync. So this last couple weeks, we have been getting back into the routine almost every day, and it has been really, really, really wonderful. So that's just been lovely. And if it's not apparent yet, I am an insane cat person. So just, if anybody is sitting there being like, why is she so excited about her cat? I just really, really love him specifically, and also all kitty cats. People are this way about their dogs too, and I don't really get that, except that I do get it because that's how I am about my cat. So I just love him so much, and and it sucked to not be having our time together. So anyway, you guys, if you have animals, you probably understand where I'm coming from. I feel like I sound crazy, but you probably get it if you have a relationship with any kind of animal. So I don't know why I'm like embarrassed about it, but I get really emotional about him, so I'm a little embarrassed. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Okay, so that's the brioche bandana cowl. Wow, really big digression. But yeah, that I kind of feel like that's the memory that's like tied to this knit though, because now when I wear it, or even talking about it now, like Auggie is who it makes me think of. And Andy, who dyed the yarn as well, which is really nice too. So I have, yeah, really positive thoughts. And then the other yarn was dyed by Molly of A Homespun House, who I don't have a personal relationship with, but I watch her podcast and I love her. So there's lots of just like really good juju just knit into this, which is nice. But anyway, I love this. I have been wearing it a lot. I just think it's super easy to wear. And I really think that this is like a great new go-to project for fingering weight yarn that you don't know what else to do with, especially if it's like leftover from, you know, other projects. I haven't actually weighed this, but it seemed to use roughly half of each skein. Like it didn't use the whole skein, and it didn't come close, but it used a fair amount. So take that with a grain of salt. I'm not gonna say it's 50 grams of each because I haven't weighed it, but it's like there-ish. And I use about 50 grams when I do a pair of socks. So possibly I use too much for the socks to have enough left over to do one of these, but I also think it's possible that I would have enough left over. I just have to weigh it. So if that's the case, and I could use the other half of a ball of yarn that I use for socks on one of these guys, that would be really great, because then I could kind of perfectly use up those fingering weight skeins of yarn, which would be really nice. If it's not enough, you just kind of do like a striping situation, and that's also good. So, or even like a scrappy one would be cute. So I just think this is a great new go-to project and an option for fingering weight yarn, because it's really fun to make and it's really easy to wear. So I just love it. Okay, so my other FO is just a hoe. Well, it's not technically even a hoe because it doesn't have the heel yet, but I finished, except for the heel, my first Time Traveler knee sock. Let's call it, it's a knee, it's kind of a knee sock. So I had 2 skeins of the Felici, and I was going to use the Felici for the afterthought heels as well, because I really like that bullseye look. But then I was getting toward the end, and I was like, I really need all I can get out of this Felici for this sock. So I decided that I would come in and do the afterthought heel with just like a plain white yarn or something. So I used up as much as I could. I actually didn't time it exactly right, because as you can see, I had a whole white stripe there, and I only used a little bit of the white stripe. And as is, it's really hard to tell exactly how high it's gonna come up on my leg since the heel isn't in there, but it feels like it's not gonna be quite to the base of my knee. And this was using the entire 50 grams other than that little white stripe. So I'm a little disappointed by that. I really wanted them as long as possible. But I'm kind of putting a sock in it, kind of putting a, it's not what I mean to say, putting a what do you call it when you putting a cork in it? Wow, I do not know what expression I'm trying to use right now. What I'm saying is I'm putting it on the back burner, I'm taking a minute. I'm not gonna do the heel, well, I'm gonna do the heels together anyway, but what I'm doing now is I've cast on the next one. I'm gonna knit the next one, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna have more or less yarn from this, because I trimmed off a couple stripes, I think, so that I could start at the purple, which is what I started on here. But I don't remember if I trimmed the stripes off of this ball or off of the other ball. So one of these balls might be a little shorter than the other. And if it turns out that this is the one that's a little shorter, then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to rip out the decreases and keep going straight, and then do a contrasting toe out of the same stuff I'm using for the heel so that I can get a little bit more length. But I'm not gonna know if that's what I wanna do until I get to the toe on this and I figure out which one was the shorter ball. I hope this is making sense. Essentially what I'm getting at is I need to get to the end of this sock, and at that point I will either discover that this sock can't even get this long, or that it could get longer. And one way or the other, I'm probably going to decide to put in contrasting toes so that I can get some more length. But I'm not going to go ahead and rip this back yet until I've sort of gotten there with this one and I kind of understand more of my situation in terms of how much yarn I have and what I need to do. So it's all kind of up in the air. But yeah, I want these to be as long as they can be. They're definitely already longer than I usually make, but I'd really like it to just hit that spot right where my calf goes in and the back of my knee. I'd really like them to get all the way up there if I can. Maybe I was a little bit too optimistic thinking I could do that with just 100 grams. But I think it's reasonable that I can do it with 100 grams plus contrasting heels and toes. I think I should be able to do that. I mean, I know I could have done a contrasting cuff too. And lesson learned, if I need to make knee socks, I should do contrasting heels, toes, and cuffs probably. But I kind of thought I could make it because, like I said, I don't use much more than 50 grams or about there for a pair of socks. So it just seemed like the other 50 grams would be enough to get all the way up to my knee. But looking back on it, I think I should have realized it wouldn't be, because Tommy of Squirrel Pie Productions, she's just gotten into knee socks and she does a pair out of 100 grams, and I know that her feet are smaller than mine. So, and I feel like her calves are probably smaller than mine too, just because she's like a small person. So I probably should have figured out that I was gonna need more. It's just so frustrating though, because I only use like half a skein of yarn to do socks the way I normally knit them, but a full skein isn't enough to do knee socks. So it's like, no matter what I do, I can't perfectly use up a full skein of yarn for socks, because without making them like an awkward height that I don't want. Which is frustrating. To answer the other questions that some of you probably have, which is why didn't I just knit these toe up so that I could more easily figure out like how high they were gonna get? Again, I just didn't really think about it. I didn't think it was gonna be an issue, and I don't like toe up socks as much as cuff down socks, which is silly because at this point, with an afterthought, it's like all you're knitting is a tube anyway. But that's just not my habit. I like cuff down because I don't like, I prefer to decrease for the toe than to increase. It's just how I am. I like Kitchener stitch, I don't mind it at all. So I just am a cuff down person, and yeah, I mean, I think obviously for experimenting with knee socks and not knowing how much yarn it was going to take, obviously toe up would have been the way to go. And if I had thought about it coherently, if I had put any more, like, clearly I should have put more thought into this, which is very unlike me, but as I've talked about before, I have mind mush from being in grad school. So I just really cannot, like, I'm just not cognitively at the level that I should be. Like, just everything is falling apart. Everything is like simple things like like thinking that I should do these toe up. It just did not occur to me because my brain is just like barely able to even knit, essentially. So, whatever, they'll be fine. I mean, I didn't knit them in the smartest way, but they'll be fine. I think in my worst case scenario, I will use contrasting to make a fairly long toe in order to get them all the way up to the knee. I think I would rather do that than have a normal length contrasting toe and have them not make it to the knee. So in the worst case scenario, they will still reach my knee. They will have contrasting, probably white heels and toes, and the toes will be a little bit long, or a lot long. And they might look a little bit silly, but what's important to me, most important to me, is that they get all the way up to my knee, because that was my concept. So, yeah. Yeah, I can live with that. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Okay, so that's my FOs, and, you know, sort of whip, because it's a hoe, and yeah. So, I have a couple more whips to share. One is something you haven't seen in a while, and one is brand new. So the thing you haven't seen in a while is the Ebba. Don't get too excited. I only knit on it for like an hour or two yesterday. That's it. So not a ton of progress, but I'm still excited that I knit on it at all, because I had not knit on it since I think before I went to Cambridge, and that's a big deal. Like, I had to figure out what was going on, where I was starting on these charts again and stuff. Like, I had to sit down and be like, what the heck's going on with this thing? So I'll show you just how pitiful the progress is, okay? See that bell? That's where I was. So I've done like 10 rows. Done nothing. I've done nothing. But honestly, just picking it up was a big deal. It really was a big deal for me. I was intimidated to pick it up again. I was not in my groove at all. And then yesterday, yesterday I spent basically the whole day knitting and cuddling with Auggie, because I went out on Friday night, which I'll talk more about and chit chat, but it's a 3-day weekend here in the States. And so even though I had a lot of stuff that I needed to get done this weekend, I felt comfortable taking an entire day and just knitting. And, you know, I actually read a lot for school that night as well, which made me feel quite good and accomplished. But basically all I did that day was knit and like cook and eat. And so after I had knit a little while on the new project, I thought I have enough time that I can sort of dedicate to, you know, picking this up again, figuring out where I am and what I need to be doing. And I thought what I'll do is, since I'm behind on a lot of podcasts right now, but one of them that I have not watched since Christmas is Skein-Deer, who is the queen of stranded knitting, particularly Norwegian, which is what this is. And so I thought I will put on some Skein-Deer episodes as my like motivation, like, you know, my inspiration, and I will knit on this. So first I picked it up, figured out what the heck was going on, without any television, and then I put on Skein Deer, and you know, I watched like, I think I watched one regular length episode and then like a little bonus she had done on her knitting of the past year, so I think it was about an hour and a half, and I did just these rows. So obviously I'm not a super fast not a super fast stranded knitter, but to be fair, it is quite large, and it's not, this part of the chart is not like memorizable. Like this part you just zoom across, but this part, the repeat is fairly long. So I felt really good about it. The stranded knitting did not feel as uncomfortable as I thought it was going to, because I haven't done stranded in a while, and I do stranded double-handed, and it's always a little bit uncomfortable. I mean, I'm not as fast at that as I am when I can just knit normally, because my right hand just doesn't know what it's doing at all. Like, every time I throw, it just feels super awkward. It's a little harder on my hands, so I get sort of like physically worn out faster, and so part of what I had built up in my mind that didn't make me want to pick this up, you know, part of that was I didn't want to look at a chart, I just wanted something mindless, but part of it also, the longer that I hadn't picked it up, the more in my mind I started to think, I'm not a stranded knitter, I can't do stranded, I'm slow, I don't know what I'm doing, it's uncomfortable, I can't do it, you know, because it had been a while, and when I picked it up, it was like, yeah, I am slower than I am when I'm not doing stranded, but I'm not that slow. Like, it's not that uncomfortable. I'm still fairly capable of doing it. I mean, you can tell when you look at this, it is quite lumpy and bumpy. I am not a super even, super experienced stranded knitter. But I do know from experience that none of these lumps and bumps matter. They will all block out beautifully and smooth. So I'm not worried about it. And it's like, it's just not as hard as it had built up in my head. And I'm really glad that I picked it up yesterday. I felt like I had a nice experience with that. So even though I haven't really made much like physical progress, I feel like mentally I've taken a big step on actually picking this up again and making it happen. And honestly, I am not that far from the end of the stranded portion, and when I get there, it's just going to be steeking and sleeves and the neck, and all of that is going to be a breeze, I'm sure. I mean, I've never steeked before, but I'm not actually intimidated by it. Hopefully that is not a gross oversight on my part. Hopefully I'm not the first person ever to be totally unintimidated by steeking and then cut and my entire sweater falls apart. I have not heard of that happening, but you know, maybe that's my fate to be that person. I don't know, but right now I'm not intimidated by it. So really getting through this chart is going to be huge, and then it's going to be a breeze, and it's going to be done probably just in time for it to be way too warm to wear it. But I'm not worried about that either, because here is the lovely knitter's luck that I have this year. I'm going to Wales in May. It turns out that Wales in May is really, really cold, which I hadn't thought about until recently, although I should have, because I once spent July and August in England, and it was incredibly cold. I took one sweater just in case there was a cold day, and then I wore that sweater every day for 2 months. So it's really cold over there, guys. And yeah, it's not just like a cliche about Great Britain. It's not just like they like to whine about the weather. It's really cold there. So I looked up like average temperatures in Wales in May, and it was like 60s. And I got real excited, you guys, because that means that right when we're having 80-degree weather here in Cincinnati, and I can't wear any of my hand knits, I get to go and spend 2 weeks in 60 degrees, which means that like if I finish a sweater any time between now and May, I don't have to wait for winter to wear it. I can totally wear it in Wales. awesome. I'm super excited. I really love cold weather, so again, I'm sure I sound like a lunatic to people who don't like cold weather, but I love cold weather and I also love sweaters, so I'm really excited about that. I talked about that. Oh, so the next whip is the new one, and I have it in this bag. It's an incredibly seasonable Halloween bag. It's about to get too big for this bag, but while I could manage it, I wanted to use this one. This is glow in the dark, and I won it as part of the Deep Dark KAL that Tommy of Squirrel Pie Productions hosted. Thank you, Tommy. I love it. It has spiders on the inside, so it's even more Halloween-y than you thought. This little polka dot, it's so cute. I believe it was sewn by one of her viewers who does not sell bags, unfortunately, because it's crazy cute. But I love this bag. So my newest project, okay, where do I start? So the other day I was in my office and one of the women that I work with was wrapped up in this wrap that was honestly just made out of fleece with fringe cut into it. It wasn't anything special, but it looked really nice. She was wearing it wrapped around her in this kind of like stylish way, and it reminded me how much I want like a really nice big rectangular wrap, the kind of thing that gives me like the appearance of like an art history professor is sort of how I think about it in my head. And I've been, sometimes I wrap my void, which is a big crescent shaped shawl, around my shoulders in that way, but it's not exactly made for that, and it just doesn't have exactly, it doesn't stay as well as a really large rectangular wrap would, I think. So I've been wanting to make one. Seeing her the other day kind of reminded me of it, and I thought, let me get on Ravelry, like let me find the one that I'm gonna make. Maybe this would be good for my next new, actually I don't even think I was thinking about making it sometime soon. I think I just wanted to mark a pattern originally. I was just thinking of it as a product knit, and I didn't think I would knit it soon. So I'm looking on Ravelry and I'm starting to think, well, what do I want it to be? And I know that I want it to have texture and to be thicker than like a fingering or a sport weight. I wanted it to be like at least a DK. I think I was thinking more of a worsted. And I wanted texture, maybe cables. And I come across the perfect wrap, which I actually had seen before, although I don't think I had marked it as a favorite. I can't remember if I had. But it's the Guernsey wrap. I don't know how well you can see the texture in that picture, or if you can see it in this picture. But it is done with this sort of traditional Guernsey texturing, which is all knits and purls. Simplest thing in the world. No cables, just knits and purls. Maybe you can see this picture a little. And I don't know a ton about traditional Guernsey knitting. Guernsey is a Channel Island, but I know that I've seen Guernsey used as part of the title of multiple patterns that have had this knit and purl texture. So I'm kind of extrapolating from that that's sort of a traditional Guernsey thing, I guess. So I had seen this wrap in an early episode. I was watching some back episodes over the holidays when I actually had free time and I was caught up on podcasts. I decided to watch some back episodes of Brooklyn Knit Folk, which she is one of my favorites, but I've only started watching her recently, so she has a ton of back episodes. So I went and I started at the beginning, and she was like a new knitter, and she was making this wrap, although she had adapted it to be a scarf, and I think it was a gift for someone, so she was making it more narrow. And I liked it, but it wasn't like it was something that I was thinking I want to make. Then I see it in my wrap search and I'm like, duh, this is perfect. This is exactly what I have in my head. I want to make it as a wrap. And not only do I want to own this product, but this is a perfect knit for where I'm at right now, which is that I really want something that is relatively mindless, because like I said, my brain is just really fried, but still interesting enough I need that in-between thing, that to fill the void that was that's left behind by this guy. This was like right before I was finished with this, and I was going, oh my God, what am I gonna knit next? So I realized this would actually be perfect. And I decided, so it is designed for worsted and for DK, and both of them have the same dimensions. So you just do different pattern repeats. I thought that I wanted it to be worsted because first of all, it would knit up faster, and I also was sort of picturing a worsted wrap in my mind. But for Brooklyn Tweed, so when they do the worsted, they recommend their shelter yarn, which is their Tweed woolen spun Columbia Targhee mix. For the DK, what they have is Arbor, and that is just Columbia? Hang on, or is it just Targhee? I don't know what Columbia and Targhee are well enough to know this. Hang on. Yeah, it's just Targhee, and it doesn't have the flex and the tweed, so it's just a little bit smoother. And that was more the kind of yarn I was picturing. Although Shelter is probably my favorite yarn of all time, for this particular project, I was wanting something more like what Arbor was, but I wanted worsted. So I was kind of looking around, and I thought, well, this would be a nice chance to use Quince & Co. Lark, because I'd never used that before. But I was looking up Quince & Co. Lark, and they didn't, they're always out of stock in a bunch of their colors, and they didn't have any of the colors that felt right for it, and I wanted to get started right away. So I thought, you know what, screw it, let me just do the DK version. Arbor will be perfect for it. I'm just gonna do that. And actually how I came to that decision was I was looking up Arbor for another project, which I will talk about in a second. And I kind of fell in love with two colors, and then I realized that the carob color would actually be perfect for this wrap, and I thought, let me just do the DK. Problem solved. So, all of that preamble, let me go ahead and show you the damn thing. So this is what I have so far. I am almost through my first skein, which I just dropped on the floor. Let me show you. Yeah, so I just have this much left. And this is how wide it's gonna be, and then it's gonna be super long. So I think there's gonna be 8 skeins in total, and I'm almost through one of them. Give you an idea of how long it's gonna be. And it just has these really lovely pattern repeats of this knit and purl texture. There you have the diagonals, these horizontal lines separating the sections. You have this sort of basket stitch, which is like a checkerboard. You have 2x2 rib, and it's just a bunch of that. Incredibly easy to memorize. The edge has this really nice garter stitch on it, and then you have a nice column of V's, and it is just flying. You don't have to think about it. Like I said, if you can read your knitting, if you can read a chart, but really I barely even refer to the chart because it's more about reading your knitting for me, and it's just so simple. This, I think, is a really, 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 really good beginner project, like super, super beginner project, because there's no increasing at all. There's absolutely no kind of like slanted mock cable, yarn over lacy, anything like that. It is knits and purls, knits and purls. I mean, you get this really beautiful effect, but the simplest thing in the world. And the only challenge, if you haven't worked with a chart before, it's only charted. But the chart, I mean, just to show you like a tiny portion of it so you get the idea, I mean, it's just this kind of stuff. It's just knits and purls. It's just knits and purls. So I also think this would be a great project to learn how to work from a chart. You don't have to worry about anything else. You're not increasing, so the chart isn't in this crazy weird shape. The chart is just a rectangle. The only thing shown on the chart is knits and purls, and there's like a nice little red line around the part that repeats, right? Really, 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 really simple. So if you're a super beginner, or if you are kind of scared of charts but you're curious to work from a chart, I think this is a really, really, really good project for that. It's designed by Jared Flood. I think I forgot to mention that. He's the like founder of Brooklyn Tweed, or the CEO, or I don't know what his title is, but he's like head honcho at Brooklyn Tweed. And this will be the second pattern I've done by him, and it's interesting because this one is so simple. The other pattern I did by him was the Lolo hat, which was fairly complex. Just the way that it was constructed was really, really different, and so it's interesting to me that his same designer's mind would be doing something like that and also something like this. So I find that interesting. But yeah, I'm excited to wear this guy, and it's really perfect for kind of mindless but not too mindless knitting right now, which is good. The color is, I would say, outside of my regular wheelhouse a little bit. I love neutrals, but I don't tend to gravitate toward brown. But I just really love this brown. It's kind of got cool undertones, almost a bit of a grayishness to it. And for some reason it just felt really, really well suited to this project. The void that I wrap around my shoulders a lot is a brown, although a very different brown than this. And the wrap that my coworker was wearing was a brown. So I think possibly just the idea of this wrap being brown was kind of in my head, and I was kind of looking for other colors, thinking I'll make it in gray or something. But when I was seeing this color, looking at the Arbor, I was like, I would like that, please. That'll be perfect. So let me show you one of these in the skein. This is Arbor, and it is DK weight. Like I said, it's 100% Targhee, non-superwash, and yeah, it's just, does it say how many grams are on here? I think it's a 50-gram ball. It feels like a 50-gram ball. Anyway, it's 145 yards in DK weight, so whatever that is. And yeah, so it's honestly, I'm impressed by how soft it is, given that it's 100% non-superwash wool and it's not merino or anything. Like I said, I'm not crazy familiar with Targhee. That's research I'm gonna have to do eventually when we do the Any Wool But Merino land for the FiberQuest Cowl. But I think it's really perfect. Doesn't have as much of a rustic feel as the Shelter does, which is a yarn that I absolutely love, but for this project, this sort of smoothness and the softness of it, I think is more what I'm looking for. So I'm really glad that I decided that I was okay with the DK weight. Oh, the other thing to mention, I'm using size 6, which is the needle that they ask for. I usually will size down because I tend to be a bit of a loose knitter. But I have lost my size 5 tips, and so I had to order them, and I wanted to start this right away. So I thought, let me just start it on size 6, see if it seems dense enough. And I think it's fine. I think it could be a little bit denser. I can see light through it. You know, if I had had the 5s, I would have cast on with the 5s. But I think it's dense enough. So I'm cool. I may come up against running out of yarn, because that's what will happen sometimes if you don't check your gauge. You think it doesn't matter because it's not a sweater, but then you run out of yarn. Obviously, this is the kind of pattern where you could kind of easily just stop short. It does have a panel that's supposed to be right in the middle of it though, so I think I would prefer to knit it exactly to the chart and not just stop randomly when I run out of yarn. But I can cross that bridge when I come to it. Maybe I'll want to stop, maybe I'll want to buy more yarn, I don't know, I'll figure it out. Not too worried about that. And yeah. So that is my last whip, and now let's talk on the horizon, and I can mention a little bit more what I was doing looking at Arbor in the first place and what's going on with that. So I looked at the latest collection out from Brooklyn Tweed. I'm not sure if it's their winter 2018 or what they call it, but I kind of fell head over heels for this sweater pattern that was just so simple and so beautiful. I'll show you. It is called the kirigami, which is the Japanese paper folding that involves cutting as well, so it's similar to origami. And it is just this lovely geometric yoke, and then a very simple pullover. Done in DK weight. It's designed for Arbor, again, same yarn. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that looks lovely. I want it so badly. And then, you know, because I'm in this place where I'm like, what kind of knits do I feel like knitting? I was already kind of thinking about the Guernsey wrap. And so I kind of thought, well, this would also be a good project for that. It's like got some mindless sections, but it's got a little bit of interest. So I thought, why don't I just look at yarn for it, and you know, we'll see what happens. So then I started looking at the Arbor, and you know, the rest is history. I ordered yarn for both of them. I have not cast this on yet, but I'm going to pretty soon, I believe. I'm not going to hold myself back from that while I'm excited about it. And let me show you what color I am doing it in. This is Vintner, and it is just a beautiful crimson, I would say. Really, really, really lovely. I had a hard time choosing. I thought I really liked it out of that dark kind of aqua green that was, you know, the sample was knit out of. I obviously would have worn it all the time if it were in something like gray. I thought about like my pink color that I love. But when I started picturing it in this deep scarlet, not scarlet, more of a crimson, this sort of deep red color, it was just like, oh, I also considered carob for it actually, but then I realized that would be perfect for the Guernsey wrap. The Vintner color is just, I feel like so wearable. It can look really, really nice and you can dress it up, but I feel like it could be really beautiful and casual with some jeans. And I think it would be really festive for, you know, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Valentine's Day, just to have this lovely deep red, solid hand knit sweater in my wardrobe. So I don't have anything like that right now, and it's very much my style. So yeah, excited about that guy. So that is basically my stash enhancement. Because what I bought this week is, or this last 2 weeks, is the Arbor for both of those projects. But I'll show you the other thing that I managed to score from Brooklyn Tweed, which is shade cards. So this one is for Shelter, which, like I said, is probably my favorite yarn of all time. Incredibly beautiful tweed from Brooklyn Tweed. This is an American Targhee and Columbia blend, which are both breeds of wool, non-superwash, worsted weight, woolen spun, rustic gorgeousness. And as you can see, it has these amazing flecks of different colors in all of the shades. They've recently introduced 3 marls to the line, so because those are new, they came on this guy as well. So I've been wanting shade cards, specifically this shade card for my favorite yarn, for a while, and I figured I would wait until I was placing an order for yarn from them. And it's just such a beautiful thing to look at. I mean, it's a good tool for choosing your yarn, but it's also just breathtaking. I feel like I could hang this on my wall, and I might. And then while I was at it, since I was getting 2 shades of Arbor, I thought I'll probably knit with Arbor again. since it's appropriate for multiple things here, and I'm getting a shade card, let me just grab an Arbor shade card while I'm at it. So I grabbed this. Really, really beautiful shades. And as you can see, you know, kind of the difference, right? The Loft. By the way, I know I said Shelter is worsted weight and then these are not worsted weight. It's because this is Shelter and Loft, which is their fingering weight. They come in the same shades. So this is actually Loft here. But I haven't knit with Loft personally. I've only done Shelter, but I'm sure it's lovely. So the difference between the Arbor and the Shelter Loft, you can see really clearly here. The Shelter and the Loft are tweed, and they have all these different flecks of color in them, and then a much smoother situation from the Loft. The Loft is also softer, I believe, so I guess the Columbia breed is maybe not as soft as the Targhee breed, would be my assumption from that, since this is a blend and this is 100% Targhee. And I'm not sure if the Arbor is worsted or woolen spun. I know that the Shelter is woolen spun. And I would guess that the Arbor might be woolen spun as well, but I don't know enough to actually just be able to look at the yarn and tell. But it has that fluffiness to it that makes me think it might be. So don't take my word for that, but yeah, really excited to have these, and I might be looking for a place that I can kind of hang them on my wall because they're so beautiful. So let's see, that's Stash Enhancement and On the Horizon all kind of rolled into one, and all that is left is to do some chit chat. So why don't I take out my sock for that? So I've rambled on a lot, so I don't have a ton of time and I don't want to go over just talking about meaningless things. So I'll just catch you up a little bit on what's been going on here this week. We had Valentine's Day on Wednesday, and Ryan sent me this lovely thing. I'll just show you all of it. Beautiful little bouquet back there. Oh, by the way, right after I recorded last time, I redid my gallery back there like I mentioned I was going to. So you might have noticed it looks a little different. You can see the yarn pyramid above me, and I rearranged some things, and yeah, that's it in full, so if you're interested. So anyway, Ryan sent these beautiful flowers to my office. Because he works second shift and he was working all week, we weren't really gonna see each other at all on Valentine's Day, and we didn't do anything special to celebrate really, like go out to dinner like before or after or anything. We just, anytime that we can see each other is special to us really at this point. So but he did send me those, which were so lovely, and I gave him a little present, which was these little soup jars that he can take to work, they're sort of like for a noodle soup, where you take jars, mason jars, and you put like those thin rice noodles that really get cooked just by adding boiling water. And I cooked up some tofu, and I made like a miso paste and ginger kind of stuff, and sriracha and everything in the bottom of it that would make like a broth for him. Bean sprouts, added some Ziplocs with fresh limes and cilantro that he could put on top. And then he can take those to work and just add hot water and have a really lovely soup there with him. So we've made those in the past, and he was asking about doing it again and kind of wishing that he had that a lot recently. And I hadn't really got my rear in gear to sort of make it happen. So I kind of surprised him with a bunch of those in the refrigerator. And he sent that to my office. So we treated each other even if we couldn't have a real special kind of evening together or anything like that. And these are just so spectacular. They have like a cabbage in them, and orchids and tulips and just all kinds of different texture. I really, really love a nice textural bouquet. and they came from Farm Girl Flowers. If you're curious, they ship, I think, just to the continental United States, but they're based in San Francisco. And they also sent me a really, really cute enamel pin that looks like the bouquet, which was so cute. But I've put it on my Furnish Supply field bag, so I'll try to remember to point it out to you the next time that I actually work on the Laura Lee, which is what's living in there. So sorry about that one. Yeah, so that was Valentine's Day, and then on Friday, as I mentioned, I went out. So my friend Kelly's birthday, she's the one that I knit the sweater for last year. You've seen her on some vlogs. She's like my best friend, and she, her birthday is today actually, but a group of us all got together to go to the opening of this new themed bar on Friday. And also, if you watch Vlogtober and Vlogmas and stuff, you've seen the other two bars owned by the same guy that have crazy themes. There's the Overlook Lodge, which is a Shining themed bar, themed after the movie The Shining. And I went there during Vlogmas and had a little knitting date with my friend Melissa, who is probably going to start a podcast sometime soon, but she's really cool, and so you might have seen that. And then during Vlogtober, you might have seen Mean Girls trivia with me and Kelly over at the Video Archive, which I also think I went to in another vlog. I really like that place, and that is a Quentin Tarantino themed speakeasy that is hidden behind a front that looks like a video store, and you have to pull out the right video and a like wall moves aside, and it's just totally crazy. So this same insanely genius person who started both of these bars, which, by the way, if you think they're all flash and no substance, they also have incredible cocktails. He decided to open a Japanese karaoke bar, and so it's got Japanese style karaoke in private rooms as well as main stage, and it's got like a robot server that like comes out of the ceiling, and again, lots of crazy themed cocktails. It's got like sparkling sake and different Japanese things, Santori whiskey, things that you can't normally find. And Kelly wanted to go out and all of us to dress Harajuku style. So you may have seen on Instagram, I kind of went with like a mix of like a general Harajuku girl with a cat face on a surgical mask, as well as a kind of lost in translation thing, which is the source inspiration for the Japanese karaoke bar theme in the first place, because everything this guy does is like inspired by movies, which is part of why I love his stuff so much, because I'm also completely obsessed with movies. So I did a pink wig to kind of nod to Lost in Translation, which I was really excited because somebody at the bar was like, "You look like ScarJo in Lost in Translation," and I was like, yes, someone got it. I'm so excited. So yeah, that was really crazy fun. We were dressed crazy. Not everyone there was dressed crazy. We had a private room for a while, and then we came out, and then some friends from work that were doing like a Galentine's Day outing, they also were there, and so then I went and I did some karaoke in their private room for a little while. So it was sort of like a, it's like one of those sitcoms where the person like accidentally has two prom dates, and then they like try to go over here and then go over there. It was a little bit like that, but you know, obviously mostly just spending time with Kelly on her birthday and our large group, but I did want to pop in and see my work friends for a little bit. And yeah, it was just crazy fun. I can't wait to take Ryan there because he loves karaoke, and yeah, it was cool to have like a night to kind of go all out and get dressed up and really just kind of like focus on, I don't know, like celebrating and spending time with people to the fullest. So I ended up getting home and going to sleep around 1 or 1:30 in the morning, which is super late for me now. And I had some drinks, so obviously I didn't sleep all that well because I'm at that age now. So that means yesterday I wasn't feeling great. I wasn't like feeling terrible, especially after the first couple hours of the day. I was feeling pretty much fine. But I also have been running myself ragged lately, so I was like, hey, 3-day weekend, I'm just gonna spend the whole day just lounging and knitting. And that is what I did, which was really, really nice. So now today it's like going to Table, I did all of my research and wrote up my notes and recorded the Land of Goats video for you guys so that can come out before March. We're back on with Return to Stars Hollow, which started up last week. So I'm getting those show notes together and getting ready to record that tomorrow, and lots of schoolwork, of course. So I'm like back in motion today, but it was really nice to just take some time to knit yesterday and just chill out. So yeah, Ryan is working this weekend, but he is off for President's Day tomorrow, and so am I. So we're gonna spend some time together, probably get some ramen at a pop-up shop in our neighborhood, and yeah, and then I'm gonna be spending that evening also recording Return to Stars Hollow. So you know, just life full of probably too many things, but I love all of them, and you know, that's how I roll. That's how my life is, especially right now that I'm in school. So yeah, I hope that your weekend is as lovely as mine has been so far. This, you know, I can't tell you in advance that this is probably going to go up Tuesday instead of Monday because of the holiday, but if you're wondering why this went up Tuesday instead of Monday, it's because we had a holiday. And yeah, so like the video if you enjoyed it. Obviously that helps other people find me, so a little reminder to do that. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to everybody that subscribes, comes back, watches every week. Especially big thank you to everyone that is participating in this KAL or any other KALs in the past. I love you guys, and I'm excited because in 2 weeks, I think, right? Hang on, in 2 weeks? Yeah, in 2 weeks, we will be announcing the winner of the Land of Camelids. So make sure you get your FOs into that thread by the end of the month. And then we're going to be starting up with the Land of Goats. So watch that video if you haven't yet. And, you know, be sure to join us. You don't have to do every single land. So if you missed camelids and you want to jump in on goats, go right ahead. Again, video with all that information in the doobly-doo, as well as links to the group on Ravelry, which also has the rules spelled out for you guys there. Yeah, and thanks for watching. Bye. I will see you in 2 weeks.